The Amazon doesn't kill the way the movies say it does. There's no roar before it happens. Somewhere in this river right now, there's a fish small enough to sit on your fingernail that the locals fear more than they fear anacondas. Above it, a bird with claws longer than a grown bear's is pulling monkeys off the branches without making a single sound. And the animal that has killed more people in this forest than every predator on this entire list combined weighs less than 1 drop of rain. This is the most dangerous stretch of forest on the planet. And almost nothing here that can kill you is the thing you're watching for. Before we go in, do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me what time it is where you are right now and what part of the world you're watching from. Black Caiman. At night, on a blackwater river deep in the Amazon, the most common thing you'll see on the surface is a pair of small red points of light floating just above the water. Their eyes lit orange by a flashlight beam. And the part that gets to people isn't seeing them. It's the moment they vanish. Because a black caiman doesn't slip away when it goes under. It just lowers. The eyes slide beneath the surface. The water goes flat and quiet again. And now there's a reptile the length of a small car somewhere below you. And you have no way of knowing which way it's pointed. This is the black caiman, Melanosuchus niger. And by any honest measurement, it's a living dinosaur. The big old ones stretch past 6 meters. The heaviest confirmed individuals cross 1,000 kilograms, a full ton of dark armored muscle, in water you cannot see through. It's the largest predator in the entire Amazon basin, and it earned that spot by quietly being better at this than everything else that ever tried. Here's the first thing that doesn't sit right. The caiman is named for its skin. Darker than the other caimans, nearly black, which makes it almost invisible in tannin-stained water at night. But the color isn't even its best tool. Run your eye along that enormous jaw and you'll notice thousands of tiny dark dots, like someone freckled the whole snout with a pin. Those are sensory organs, pressure detectors so fine they read the faintest ripple in the water around them. A tapir lowering its mouth to drink. A deer's leg breaking the surface, a barefoot shifting on a muddy bank meters away. The caiman doesn't need to see any of it. In total darkness, in water like ink, it builds a map of everything touching the surface. And it lines up its move before anything knows it's there, and when it commits, it does something that looks genuinely prehistoric, because it is. A caiman's teeth aren't made to cut. They're made to hold. So it clamps onto something large, drags it under, and spins, fast along its own length, over and over. The water turns white. That spin generates a twisting force nothing soft can stay attached to. It's how a caiman takes a piece off an animal far too big to swallow whole. The thing on the other end of it does not get a second spin. It is, frankly, one of the most effective tools in the whole river. Now here's where it gets strange. That same jaw, the one that can crush the shell of a full-grown river turtle and snap a thigh bone like a dry twig, belongs to one of the most careful mothers in the Amazon. When her eggs are ready, the female rolls them gently in the sand of the nest until the shells give way. Then she lifts the newborns out, tiny, soft, no bigger than your hand, and carries them across the forest inside that same mouth, past those same teeth, without leaving a single scratch. The most powerful bite in the river, used like a pair of tweezers. Same animal, same muscles, both jobs. And just so we're clear about where the black caiman sits in all this, when researchers look inside the stomachs of the big old ones, they keep finding the rest of this list. Other caimans, mature anacondas, and more than once jaguars. The very cat that other animals here spend their entire lives trying to avoid. In the black water, after dark, the black caiman doesn't have a rival. It has a menu. But there's something in this same river that the caiman, for all its armor, keeps its distance from. You can't see it, you can't hear it, and by the time you feel it, it's already done. Electric eel. 860 volts. That's the number that matters here. A wall socket in most homes runs somewhere between 110 and 220. The recently identified Amazonian species Electrophorus voltae puts out around 860, close to 4 times what comes out of your wall. And it generates it inside a river, underwater, on purpose. This is the electric eel, which for the record isn't even an eel. It's a knife fish. And it has turned the one thing you can't escape in a river, the water itself, into the delivery system for its entire way of hunting. Here's the part that's hard to believe the first time you hear it. More than 3/4 of this animal's long body has nothing to do with swimming. It's a battery. Those segments are packed with thousands of modified muscle cells called electrocytes, stacked in rows like cells lined up in series. Each one holds a tiny charge. On its own, nothing. But the eel's nervous system can fire all of them at the exact same instant. And when it does, thousands of tiny charges stack into one synchronized pulse strong enough to drop a large animal where it stands. And it gets stranger, because the eel doesn't only use that charge as a weapon, it uses it as a remote control. The neurobiologist Kenneth Catania showed that a hunting eel sends out fast pairs of pulses, little doublets, into the murky water. Those pulses reach right past a hidden fish's own brain and fire its muscles directly. The fish twitches. It can't help it. Its body is being operated from the outside, against its will. And that twitch is exactly what the eel was waiting for, because it gives away where the fish is hiding. The eel doesn't have to find its target. It makes its target raise its hand. There's one more move, and it's the boldest thing it does. When something far too big to deal with, a horse wading in from the bank, say, gets too close, the eel doesn't back off. It rises straight up out of the water, presses its chin against the intruder, and discharges directly into it. Why leave the water at all? Because water spreads the charge thin, out in the air, pressed skin to skin. Every last volt goes exactly where the eel wants it. So you'd expect the most advanced, most genuinely science fiction hunter in the river to be some flawless apex machine. It isn't. The electric eel is nearly blind. It has no real teeth to speak of. And this is the part that should keep it humble. It can't breathe underwater. It has to surface for air every few minutes, or it goes under for good. The single most electrified animal in the Amazon would lose to the same water it weaponizes the moment it stopped coming up to breathe. And yet, in a river that holds a 1-ton caiman and a fish that fires 800 volts. If you ask the people who actually live here what unsettles them most in the water, a lot of them won't name either one. They'll name something you'd have trouble even seeing. Candiru. It's about the size of a toothpick. Thin, pale, nearly see-through. In a river full of giants, the animal that produces the most personal, most quietly dreaded fear in the whole Amazon basin is small enough to lose between 2 fingers. This is the candiru, Vandellia cirrhosa. And the reason it gets under people's skin, and that's not entirely a figure of speech, is that everything else here comes at you from the outside. The candiru is the one that goes the other way. In its normal life, it's a tiny freeloader. It swims into the gill openings of much larger fish, anchors itself, and feeds on what flows through. It's built for one job: find the current coming out of a living thing, follow it to the source, and stay. The trouble, the reason it has a reputation that runs across the entire region, is that a tiny fish hardwired to swim up a flow of water doesn't always choose the right flow, or the right host, and once it's in, it has no intention of leaving. Just behind its head, near the gills, the candiru carries a set of short, sharp, backward-facing spines. The instant it's lodged inside a host, those spines flare outward, like an umbrella opening the wrong way. Now it's anchored. Pulling it back the way it came doesn't free it. It only drives the spines in deeper. The people who've dealt with it will tell you there's no clever trick, no firm tug that works. Getting one out safely is a job for a surgeon, and nothing short of that. Here's the detail that makes people wince. Once it reaches a supply and starts to feed, the candiru takes it in so fast and so completely that its whole belly balloons outward, swelling to 3, 4, even 5 times its original size in the space of 2 or 3 minutes. A toothpick that fills out like a water balloon. In about the time it took to read this far, for decades, the story was that the candiru hunts by smell, that it follows the trace of waste in the water and homes in on people that way. In 2001, a laboratory study by the biologist Stephen Spata put that idea to the test, and the kangaroo failed it outright. They don't follow scent. They hunt by sight and by motion, by the physical push of water against their bodies. Which sounds like relief until you actually sit with it. It isn't smelling for you. It's reading the water. And if you thrash around in a murky river, the turbulence you stir up looks exactly like a large fish on the move. So it turns and it swims straight toward it, toward the disturbance, toward you. Not because it knows what you are. It doesn't, and it doesn't need to. The river has one more way of reaching you, and it's the oldest one there is. It doesn't bother with the gills, and it has no use for electricity. It simply wraps around you and waits for you to do most of the work yourself. Green anaconda. That isn't a figure of speech. It's the actual mechanism. The green anaconda, Eunectes murinus, is the heaviest snake on the planet, and the way it works has surprisingly little to do with strength the way you'd picture it. On land, a big anaconda is almost a disappointment. Slow, heavy, dragging itself along like it resents the effort. People see one out of the water and wonder what all the fear is about. And then it slides into the river, and the answer becomes obvious. In the water, all that weight stops being a burden and becomes the whole point. It hangs in the shallows with only its eyes and nostrils breaking the surface, and it waits. It is, genuinely, one of the most patient animals in the entire forest. It is in no hurry whatsoever. The females are the giants, the ones that push past 6 meters and carry the kind of mass that makes the number sound made up. And here's the part that turns patience into something colder. An anaconda doesn't just squeeze blindly and hope. It has fine pressure receptors along its body, and once it has a grip, it can feel the heartbeat of whatever it's holding, so it doesn't waste energy. Every time the animal in its coils breathes out, the snake takes up the slack, tightening into the space the ribcage just gave up, never letting it back. A little more on every exhale. The chest is allowed to empty, and then it's quietly not allowed to fill again. For a long time, the assumption was that this is about cutting off air. It isn't, and the truth is faster and stranger than that. Ecologists studying large constrictors, the herpetologist Scott Boback among them, found that the pressure does its work on the circulation first. The squeeze is strong enough that the heart simply can't push against it anymore. Blood stops moving, and that happens well before running out of air ever would. The numbers are blunt. A big anaconda can apply somewhere around 90 psi. In plain terms, that's close to lying flat on the ground and having the parked wheel of a small bus resting on your chest. There's no wrestling free of that. There's no clever leverage. The grip just quietly closes the account. Then there's the swallowing, which involves a piece of anatomy people consistently get wrong. The myth says the snake unhinges or dislocates its jaw like it's breaking something to make room. The reality is worse in a way. The left and right halves of the lower jaw were never joined together in the first place. They move completely independently. They stretch, they slide, one side reaching forward while the other holds. So the mouth doesn't open around a wide-shouldered meal so much as it walks over it, step by step, each set of backward curving teeth catching and dragging like a row of small hooks. It's slow, it is methodical, and it does not stop halfway. And just when the green anaconda is starting to seem like a flawless machine, the species hands you one of the strangest details in the whole forest. The females, the largest, most dominant snakes on Earth, sometimes end a mating season by turning on their own partner. The male is a fraction of her size, and on more than a few documented occasions, the much larger female has simply taken him in afterward, whole, and used his body as free energy to carry the pregnancy through. The most powerful constrictor in the world, treating romance as a packed lunch, the anaconda is the river's slow hand. But up out of the water, on the forest floor itself, there's something that does the same job in a fraction of a second, and you will almost certainly never see it before it happens. Bushmaster, here's something the guides in the deep forest know that the tourists never do. The most dangerous step you take in the Amazon isn't into the water. It's onto a pile of dead leaves. Because the surukuku, the bushmaster, Lachesis muta, is a master of looking like exactly that. Damp, brown, curled leaf litter on a dark forest floor. It is the largest viper in the Americas. The big ones reach 3 meters, and people walk right past them, or right alongside them, completely unaware, because the snake's entire strategy is to be the most boring thing in your field of view. It doesn't need to see you to know precisely where you are. On each side of its head, between the eye and the nostril, the bushmaster carries a small pit, a heat-sensing organ tuned so finely it can register temperature differences down to a few thousandths of a degree. It isn't seeing warmth so much as drawing a thermal picture, the shape of a warm animal glowing against a cool forest, built entirely out of body heat. On the blackest, most overcast night, when there's nothing for an eye to work with, the bushmaster is reading you off the heat coming off your skin. The strike that follows isn't a guess. It's aimed, and the bushmaster does something that sets it apart from the smaller, faster vipers. A lot of snakes strike, deliver, and pull away instantly, a quick contact and a fast retreat. The bushmaster, when it commits to a large, warm target, tends to hold on. It keeps its jaws working, latched into the muscle, actively delivering more and more, emptying glands that are unusually large because its head is unusually large. One encounter can leave behind several hundred milligrams of venom, somewhere in the range of 300 to 500, pushed in within moments. Researchers studying what that venom actually does found something that doesn't match the usual story. People expect the slow, visible damage, the swelling, the tissue going bad around the wound. With the bushmaster, that's not the first thing that arrives. The first thing is the floor dropping out. Blood pressure crashes, sudden, steep, sometimes before the bitten limb has had time to swell at all. The victim can go down from the pressure collapse first while the rest is still catching up. They call it the hypotensive effect, and it's the reason this snake is feared in a way the bigger, louder animals aren't. It can take a strong adult off their feet before they've fully registered what touched them. And here's the quiet twist on the most fearsome snake on the continent. For all its size, all its precision, all its venom, the bushmaster is oddly fragile. It depends entirely on the cool, deep shade of undisturbed forest. Clear the canopy above it, let the sun reach the ground where it lives, and the supposedly invincible queen of the forest floor doesn't adapt or move on. It withers. The most feared snake in the Amazon can be undone by something as simple as an open patch of sky. Nothing so far on this list has actually been in a hurry. And the next one isn't going to end you at all. That's the entire point of it. Bullet ant. The insect we're talking about is roughly the length of your fingernail. It won't bring you down. It won't leave you with anything permanent. What it does instead is, in its own narrow way, more impressive than that. And it's earned a place on this list for a reason that has nothing to do with how dangerous it is, and everything to do with how it has perfected one single sensation. This is the toucandera, known in English as the bullet ant, Paraponera clavata, and it got that name the only honest way a name like that gets earned, from the people it has stung. Ask them to describe it, and the comparison they keep reaching for is being shot. Not stung, shot. The entomologist Justin Schmidt built an entire index ranking the pain of insect stings, and the bullet ant sits at the very top of it, the maximum score, a full point clear of nearly everything else. And it isn't a quick spike either. It comes in waves, building, fading, returning, riding along with cold sweats and shaking for 12, sometimes a full 24 hours after the ant has long since let go. The reason is a compound called ponerotoxin, and what makes it so relentless is that it doesn't do damage in any normal sense. It targets the wiring. It jams the channels that carry signals along your nerves into the open position, so the pain message can't switch itself off. There's nothing to treat, nothing dissolving, nothing failing. The alarm is simply stuck on, and the body has no way to reach the switch, which is exactly why one group of people walk straight toward it on purpose. Among the Saturemawe, A boy becomes a man by putting his hands inside a woven glove packed with dozens of these ants, stingers turned inward, and holding them there for minutes at a time. And he doesn't do it once. He comes back and does it again and again across years. The ritual works because the ant is reliable. It always delivers exactly what it promises. And here's the part that pulls it all together. The small piece of genius hiding inside that fingernail-sized body. The bullet ant's venom was never refined to bring a large animal down. Ending something huge costs energy and gains the colony nothing. So evolution went the other direction entirely and optimized for pure, unforgettable misery. Enough that whatever blundered into the nest will spend the next day in a state it never wants to repeat, and will go far out of its way for the rest of its life to never feel it again. It didn't need to be lethal. It just needed to be impossible to forget. And on that one specific job, the bullet ant has never once failed. Everything so far has been waiting. Buried in the leaves, folded into the water, woven into a glove. The next three don't wait for anything. They go looking, and the first of them is wearing the most beautiful coat in the forest. Jaguar. Those markings, the dark rings with a single spot set inside them, the ones people call rosettes, aren't decoration, whatever a zoo brochure tells you. They're a vanishing act. In the broken light of the forest floor, where the sun comes through the canopy and scattered coins and the shadows move with every breeze, that pattern doesn't stand out. It dissolves. It breaks the outline of a very large cat into pieces your eye refuses to assemble. And this is the uncomfortable truth about meeting a jaguar, Panthera onca, in its own forest. There's a decent chance the moment you finally notice it is not the moment it noticed you. It may have been watching you, perfectly still, for half an hour before you had the faintest idea you weren't alone. The jaguar hunts differently from the big cats most people picture. A lion brings something down and holds the throat, waiting, cutting off the air over long minutes. The jaguar has no patience for the slow version. It goes for the head. Its canines drive straight through the skull, between the ears into the brain, or it punches through the back of the neck and parts the spine. It's less of a struggle and more of a switch being thrown. One precise application of force, and the contest is simply over before it became a contest. And it can do that because of what's bolted to the top of its skull. Run your hand along a jaguar's head, hidden under the short fur, and there's a ridge of bone running front to back, the sagittal crest. It's an anchor point, and the jaw muscles that attach to it are enormous. The result is a bite that, pound for pound, is the most powerful of any big cat on Earth, in the neighborhood of 1,500 psi. That's enough to crack the shell of a river turtle like an egg. Enough to crunch through bone that would stop a larger cat cold. The Asian tiger is a far bigger animal in every dimension, and even the tiger doesn't bite like this. The jaguar traded size for the single most concentrated set of jaws in the New World. Then there's the thing jaguars do that other cats flatly refuse to. Cats, as a rule, hate water. The jaguar never got that message. It swims by choice. It patrols the flooded forest, slides into black rivers after dark, and goes after the caimans on their own terms, in the water, where the armored reptile is supposed to have the advantage. The apex of the riverbank wades in and hunts the apex of the river, and wins often enough that it's just part of the routine. But the strangest thing the jaguar does, you don't see. You hear it. Researchers in the field, including work documented through the Wildlife Conservation Society, have recorded jaguars doing something genuinely unsettling. They imitate the calls of their own prey. In stretches of forest where small monkeys move through the branches, a jaguar will sit hidden and produce the high, distressed cry of a young monkey in trouble. And the troop responds the way a troop is built to respond. The protectors come toward the sound, toward the lost infant that isn't there, straight into the quiet green where the cat is waiting. It learned to speak just enough of their language to call them in. The jaguar owns the ground and the water's edge. But there's a layer above all of it, the canopy, where animals spend their whole lives precisely because the jaguar can't follow them up there. And that, it turns out, was never as safe as it looked. Harpy eagle, 13 centimeters. That's the length of the rear talon on a harpy eagle, Harpia harpygia, and it's the number that reframes everything you assumed about being up in the trees. 13 centimeters is longer than the front claws of a grown brown bear. Picture that, a bear's claw, except this one is attached to something that drops out of the sky between the branches and never makes a sound doing it. The harpy is one of the most powerful birds of prey alive. The big females can weigh as much as 9 kilograms and stretch past 2 meters across the wings. And the part that doesn't seem like it should be physically possible is the silence. An animal that size threading through the cluttered maze of a rainforest canopy at speeds near 80 kilometers an hour should be a commotion, cracking branches, scattering leaves, announcing itself 100 meters out. It does none of that. It comes through the gaps without a whisper. A monkey or a sloth going about an ordinary afternoon gets no warning at all. The first sign that anything is wrong is the impact, and by then the harpy is already pulling it off the branch and away. The talons do the work, and they're built like a machine. As the harpy closes its grip, a tendon mechanism in the leg locks it into place. A ratchet that holds without any continued effort. So the bird can clamp down with a force estimated at over 50 kilograms per square centimeter and simply stay locked there. Those rear talons aren't made for slicing. They're made to punch through the skull of a monkey or to close around a spine. The whole foot is a single-purpose instrument, and the purpose is to make the contest end on contact. And here's the detail that gives the harpy a different kind of weight on this list. When researchers studied the remains around harpy nests, they found a pattern that looks less like hunting and more like strategy. The harpy often targets the dominant male of a monkey troop first, the big, confident protector, the one the others orient around. Take him out at the start, and the rest of the group is left scattered, leaderless, rattled. And a troop in that state is easy. The harpy doesn't just take a meal. It takes the one individual whose absence turns the rest into a set of simple opportunities for the days that follow. So that's the picture so far. An armored apex in the water. A perfect ambush on the ground. A silent one from the sky. If you were sketching out the most fearsome predator in this flooded world, you'd reach for something like those, scaled, or fanged, or enormous. You would almost certainly not draw something that's furry, about the size of a person, and looks for all the world like it's grinning at you. Giant otter. This is the giant otter, Pteronura brasiliensis, and it is the single animal that the other monsters on this list actively avoid. Watch one for a few minutes and the idea seems absurd. They squeak. They slide down muddy banks. They poke their heads up out of the water with an expression that lands somewhere between curious and delighted. And then the water erupts, and the cuddly thing becomes a coordinated unit of 10. And you understand very quickly why the caimans give them room. The giant otter does not fight on strength, because individually it doesn't have the strength to spare. It fights on numbers and on nerve. When a family takes on a large caiman, they don't trade blows with it. They surround it, a full circle, all sides at once. One darts in and nips the tip of its tail. The reptile spins to deal with that, and while it's turned, another rakes at its eyes, and a third hits the flank and is gone before the jaws can come around. The caiman can't face 10 fast targets in every direction at the same time. It wheels and lunges and wheels again for as long as it can, and the thing that finally gives out isn't its armor, it's its stamina. A reptile runs on a different engine than a warm-blooded mammal, and it tires. The otters simply outlast it, win by exhaustion, and the giant of the river ends the encounter too spent to do anything about how it ends. And they do all of this while talking the entire time. When researchers actually broke down the noise, those squeaks and barks and screams turned out to be a working vocabulary, somewhere around 24 distinct calls, a real combat language. There are sounds for caiman ahead, sounds for flanking, sounds that redirect the whole group's attention to a threat on one particular side. It's a furry, squeaking infantry unit. And it's coordinated enough to push jaguars off the riverbank and take apart anacondas and the black caimans we opened this whole thing with. which makes the giant otter's one real weakness almost funny. This indestructible little squad runs that hot, athletic, hypercharged metabolism right up against a hard limit. It cannot handle being hungry. An adult needs to put away 3 or 4 kilograms of fish every single day just to keep the engine lit. Miss a couple of days of good hunting, 2, maybe 3, and the unstoppable river gangster doesn't tough it out. It runs out of fuel and folds, undone not by any rival in the water but by skipping lunch. The most feared animal on the river, and its great vulnerability is breakfast. The giant otter wins because there are 10 of it. But the river holds things that don't come in tens. They come in hundreds and in the thousands, and they don't take turns. Red-bellied piranha start with the calm, because the calm is the whole trick. A backwater in the dry season can be the most peaceful-looking thing in the Amazon. Flat, brown, still, nothing moving on the surface. You could watch it for 10 minutes and decide there's nothing in it at all, and then a wounded bird hits the water, or a single drop of something falls in, and that flat brown mirror turns into a churning, thrashing boil in less than a second. The stillness wasn't emptiness. It was a few hundred red-bellied piranhas, Pygocentris naturari, doing absolutely nothing, waiting for a reason. What happens next is the part that earned the legend. And it deserves the word people use for it, a frenzy. Set off by the scent in the water or the frantic turbulence of something in trouble, the shoal switches off every bit of caution at once. They come in blind. They come in so fast and so indiscriminately that in the middle of that boiling swirl they will bite each other, clip a neighbor's fin, catch an eye, and not even pause to register it. There's no coordination to it, no plan. It's a few hundred animals all reaching the same conclusion in the same instant and acting on it before any of them can think better of it. And the tool they're working with is genuinely precise, even if the moment isn't. A piranha's teeth are short triangles, and the top row and bottom row mesh together perfectly, with no gaps, like the two halves of a steel trap closing into each other. They don't chew and they don't crush bone. The piranha locks those interlocking edges onto the skin and then shakes its whole body, hard, using the torque to twist out a clean, round plug of flesh, closer to a hole punch than a bite. Researchers who measured the force found something out of proportion to the size of the fish. Around 320 newtons at the jaw, roughly 30 times the animal's own body weight. A fish you could hold in one hand, biting like something many times larger. There's an eerier layer underneath all of it, too. When scientists dropped hydrophones into piranha water, they discovered the shoal is talking in the dark. Piranhas drum. They vibrate muscles against the swim bladder to produce sound, and they use it. In the moments before the feeding kicks off, the microphones pick up a sequence, low barks of contest, then a sharp mechanical click. It's not random noise. It's a running conversation in black water, and the click is something close to a starting signal. So you'd think this is one of the great horrors of the river. And then you learn the part that quietly undoes the whole reputation. The cow-stripping monster of 100 movies is in real life deeply timid. Piranhas don't gather in those huge shoals out of some tactical instinct for war. They do it out of fear. They are prey every day for giant otters, for anacondas, for river dolphins. The shoal is a safety and numbers measure for a nervous animal. And the famous frenzy isn't their normal way of eating at all. It's an emergency, an opportunistic burst that mostly shows up in the dry season, when shrinking pools trap fish together and food runs short. The terrifying boil in the water is the sound of a frightened animal that got a rare, desperate opening, which is somehow worse and definitely funnier. The piranha gets its reputation from the slow, calm water. But the Amazon also has fast water, white, churning, oxygen-rich rapids. And there's a particular comfort people take in fast water. The reasoning goes, nothing could ambush you in current like that. And that comfort is exactly what the next animal feeds on. Payara. The payara. The dogtooth. The vampire fish, Hydrolycus scomboroides, has a face that looks like it was designed to end an argument about whether fish can be frightening. Jutting straight up out of its lower jaw is a pair of fangs that, on the big ones, reach up to 15 centimeters. Not teeth, fangs. Curved daggers longer than your finger pointing at the sky from the bottom of its mouth. And it lives in precisely the fast, turbulent water where you'd swear nothing was waiting. It doesn't hunt the way other predatory fish do. There's no sideways slash, no grabbing a mouthful from the flank. The payara comes from below and goes straight up, a vertical ballistic strike, driving that lower jaw into its target like a harpoon coming up through the water, the fangs running up into the body of whatever it hit. The whole thing happens fast enough to be unfair. High-speed cameras clocked the complete strike, the jaw dropping open, the lunge, the impalement, the recovery, at around 50 milliseconds. The prey doesn't dodge it, doesn't flinch from it, doesn't even register it, because 50 milliseconds is faster than its nervous system can carry the news from one end of its body to the other. It's over before the alarm has finished being sent. But the truly strange thing about the payara is a problem it created for itself. Those two enormous fangs in the lower jaw point straight up, directly at the underside of the fish's own skull and brain, which means that closing its mouth the normal way, hard, around a struggling meal, should drive its own fangs up through its own head. Evolution's answer to that is wonderfully blunt. It drilled holes. The payara's upper jaw has two deep, hollow channels bored into the bone, sheaths, and when the mouth closes, each long fang slides perfectly and harmlessly up into its own private tunnel inside the skull. The most fearsome set of jaws in the rapids only works at all because the animal is, in effect, carefully sheathing its own knives inside its own head every time it shuts its mouth. The payara hunts alone, and it relies on being faster than you can react. The last animal in this part relies on the exact opposite, being so many that reacting is pointless. Army ants. You hear it before you see it, and what you hear doesn't make sense at first. It sounds like rain on the forest floor when there's no rain. That sound is everything else leaving. Insects pouring out of the leaf litter, frogs bailing out of the way, the whole understory emptying ahead of an advancing front. Because army ants, Eciton burchelli, are coming through, and a forest learns to read the warning. The first thing to understand about them is that they don't have a home in any normal sense. Most of the year, the colony itself is the nest. When they stop to rest, hundreds of thousands of ants link their legs and bodies together into a single hanging mass, a living ball slung under a log or a root, with the queen sealed deep in the warm center of it. It pulses faintly with the movement of the bodies that make it. There's no structure they built. They are the structure, and the entire devastating operation is run completely blind. This is the detail that keeps surprising people. These famously perfect raiders, this flawless military machine, are made up of individuals with no working eyes at all. Not poor vision, none. The whole thing navigates by scent and touch, by chemical trails laid down and read by the millions, and it works better than sight ever would. The soldiers at the edges carry oversized, sickle-shaped mandibles, curved like hooks, and so exaggerated that the soldiers can't actually feed themselves with them. The workers have to put food directly into their mouths, or they'd run out of fuel standing guard over their own colony. But the thing that genuinely stops scientists is the engineering. When the column hits a gap in the ground, a split in a log, a small ravine, the ants build a bridge out of their own bodies, clamping onto one another and stretching themselves across the open space so the rest can pour over the top. And research out of the Max Planck Institute showed these bridges aren't dumb, fixed structures. They're calculated live. The colony constantly weighs the cost. How many workers are tied up holding the bridge versus the traffic crossing it, and adjusts in real time, reinforcing where the load runs heavy, letting it dissolve when the need passes. It's a running mathematical solution to a physics problem, solved by a swarm with no central mind and not a single eye among them. And the scale of what that swarm moves through is the number to leave you with. A single colony can run to 2 million individuals, advancing as one blind front across the forest floor and clearing tens of thousands of prey animals out of its path in a day, and then doing it again the next day and the next. It doesn't have a strategy you could point to. It just doesn't stop. The army comes in the millions. The next ones come alone. And they don't need the numbers because each of them is, by itself, the thing the forest floor was built to be afraid of. Brazilian wandering spider. Almost every spider on the planet has the same plan when something enormous appears. Leave. Hide, drop, scatter, anything but engage. The Brazilian wandering spider, Phonutria, never adopted that plan. The name itself tells you what it is. A wanderer, not a web builder. It doesn't sit in a tidy trap waiting for dinner to arrive. It roams at night, on foot, actively hunting across the forest floor. And the reason it has the reputation it does isn't really about the venom. It's about where it chooses to spend its days. This is a spider that likes to tuck itself into dark, enclosed spaces during daylight. And the dark, enclosed spaces it finds most appealing happen to be the ones near people. Boots left by a tent. A fold in a piece of clothing. The quiet corner of a room. It ends up exactly where humans reach without looking. Now corner it. Trap something thousands of times its size against a spider that small, and nearly any other species bolts. The wandering spider does the opposite, and it's genuinely unnerving to watch. It rears back on its hind legs, lifts its front pair high into the air, and shows you the bright red undersides of its fangs. And then it comes forward, at the thing 1,000 times its size. The venom backing up that confidence is a compound called PHTX3, and it works by overwhelming the channels that fire your pain signals, jamming them wide open so the nervous system lights up all at once. It holds a Guinness record for the sheer potency of the mix. It takes only about 0.006 of a milligram to drop a mouse. A rounding error of venom. But the strangest thing about this spider is what its venom turned into. One of its effects in male mammals is an unusual and famously painful side effect, a long, involuntary medical condition that for a long time was just a grim footnote to an encounter. Then researchers looked closer at how the venom produces it and realized it was acting on the same nitric oxide pathways modern medicine uses to treat erectile dysfunction. So the venom of one of the most aggressive spiders in the Amazon is now a serious subject of pharmaceutical study. The thing that makes it a nightmare in a boot is the same thing that might end up in a pill bottle. The wandering spider gets to you by hiding. Where you're careless, the next one announces itself, but not the way you'd expect. Goliath bird eater. The jaguar is frightening because it roars. The Goliath is frightening because of a much smaller sound. Picture the deep forest at 2 in the morning, no moon, the kind of dark where your own hand is a rumor. And across the dead leaves nearby comes a dry, deliberate clicking, the sound of hard claws taking heavy, unhurried steps. You turn your light toward it, and there, picking its way across the leaf litter, is a spider roughly the size of a dinner plate. This is the Goliath bird eater, Theraphosa blondi, and it holds the record as the largest spider on Earth by sheer mass. Up to 175 grams of animal, with a leg span around 30 centimeters and a pair of fangs nearly 4 centimeters long. When it's cornered, it doesn't only show those fangs. It rubs the coarse bristles on its legs together to produce a loud, rasping hiss. And the unsettling part is what that hiss imitates almost perfectly: the dry rattle of a rattlesnake winding up. A spider that learned to sound like a venomous snake to make much larger things reconsider. And if the bluff doesn't land, it has a stranger weapon than its bite. Rather than spend venom on something it can't eat, the Goliath turns its back, brushes its hind legs across its own abdomen, and throws a cloud of microscopic hairs into the air. Each hair is barbed, like a tiny harpoon, and they drift into the eyes, the nose, the throat of whatever's threatening it, settling into soft tissue like an itch made of cut glass. It's a defense that works on a jaguar's curious face just as well as a person's. Here's the paradox sitting inside the name, though. Bird eater is almost entirely a myth. It rarely climbs, rarely touches birds, and spends its life hunting frogs and insects on the ground. And the venom in those dramatic fangs is frankly weak. For a human, the bite is reportedly about on par with a wasp sting. The biggest spider in the world is, by the standards of this list, nearly harmless. Its real vulnerability points inward. Its whole body runs on internal fluid pressure, and when it molts, when it sheds its hard shell and the new one underneath is still soft, it's at the mercy of that pressure. A small crack in the fresh, unhardened shell at the wrong moment is something it can't seal, and the giant can quietly come apart from a scrape it would shrug off any other week of its life. The Goliath rules the leaf litter, but there's a place even it won't go, a place that belongs entirely to something with too many legs to count. Giant Centipede Inn, the deepest limestone caves of the region, the ones with ceilings lost in the dark and floors no one wants to think about. Look up. Hanging from the rock overhead, anchored by its rear legs and reaching its front half out into open air, is the Amazonian giant centipede, Scolopendra gigantea. And it isn't resting. It's fishing. It swings itself out into the blackness of the cave and snatches bats out of the air mid-flight, catching a flying mammal in total darkness by hanging upside down and grabbing. The weapon it uses isn't a mouth. Look at the front of a centipede, and the pair of curved, pointed fangs flanking the head aren't teeth at all. They're its first pair of legs, evolved over time into a venom-injecting set of pincers. The largest crawling syringe in the forest is, technically, a pair of repurposed legs. The venom they deliver includes a compound researchers isolated and gave a name that tells you how they felt about it: the SSM spooky toxin. It works by locking down the channels that keep a heart beating in rhythm. And in a small animal, it can end the contest in around 30 seconds. And then comes the detail that reframes the whole thing. This animal, fast enough to pluck a bat from the air, precise enough to place its fangs exactly, lethal enough to have a toxin named for the dread it inspires, is completely blind. It does every bit of it, the hanging, the timing, the strike, without seeing a single thing. It reads the cave entirely through vibration and touch, and it doesn't miss. So far, everything in this part has at least been big enough to see coming. The last one is the biggest of all of them, and it might be the most harmless thing on this entire list, which is exactly why it belongs here. Titan beetle. There's a sound in the Amazon night that makes experienced people stop mid-sentence, and it isn't a growl. It's a low, heavy droning, a thick, laboring buzz, like a tiny helicopter working its way through the trees, and it gets louder. And then it stops with a solid thud as something armored collides with a trunk or a post nearby. That's the Titan beetle, Titanus giganteus, coming into land, and it weighs enough that the landing is audible. The Titan is one of the largest insects on Earth. The big ones reach 16.5 centimeters. The same length as a grown adult's hand, measured from the wrist to the tip of the longest finger, and it does not flee when something approaches. It plants its claws, arches up, hisses, and snaps a pair of serrated jaws that have been measured doing genuinely alarming things. They can bite a wooden pencil cleanly in two, and they're strong enough to split human skin. It's a hand-sized beetle that stands its ground and tells you, in no uncertain terms, to back off. And here is the joke biology buried inside that armored tank. The adult Titan beetle has no working digestive system. It does not eat, not leaves, not wood, not anything. It emerges already carrying everything it will ever run on, fat banked during its larval years. And it spends its brief, fierce adult life flying around in search of a mate, snapping pencils at anything that bothers it, slowly burning down the last of its reserves until the fuel runs out. The most fearsome jaws on the forest floor have nothing to chew, and the strangest part is what nobody has ever seen. For all the giant adults collected and cataloged, no one has ever found a living Titan beetle larva. Not one documented in the wild. Judging by the size of the boreholes left in the wood, scientists figure the grubs must be enormous. Hand-length creatures chewing through buried timber for years in the dark. But they remain completely unseen, somewhere underneath the forest floor, directly beneath boots that have no idea they're there. Everything in this part was at least big enough to notice. The last few animals are not, and one of them is already, quietly, the most dangerous animal in this entire forest. Poison dart frog. Everything on this list so far has been built around not being seen. The camouflage, the black skin and black water, the leaf that turns out to be a snake. And then there's a small frog sitting in the open, in broad daylight, painted in colors so loud they look like a warning sign, which is exactly what they are. The poison dart frogs, family Dendrobatidae, with the most potent belonging to the genus Philobates, don't hide, because hiding is for animals that can be eaten. This one strolls across the forest floor in neon blue, in burning orange, in colors that say, plainly, to every predator in the area, you already know what happens if you try. And the remarkable thing is that it isn't a bluff. The label is honest. The chemistry behind that confidence is a compound called batrachotoxin, and it doesn't damage tissue or break anything down. It targets the wiring directly. It forces the channels that carry nerve signals to stay locked open, so the muscle sees and can't be told to stop. The amounts involved are almost hard to take seriously. The most potent species carries on its skin enough to be a genuine threat to 10 grown adults at once, and it's packed into a frog you could comfortably hide under a bottle cap. That potency is where the name comes from too. For generations, forest peoples have used it with real care, touching the tips of their blowgun darts to the frog's back to carry just a trace of it out hunting, taking down prey high in the canopy without ever putting themselves at risk. But here's the fraud at the center of the whole thing, and it's a good one. The frog cannot make any of it. It has no machinery for producing batrachotoxin at all. Every bit of its fearsome reputation is borrowed, pulled out of its diet from the specific ants and beetles and tiny forest insects it eats, then concentrated and stored in the skin. Raise one of these frogs in captivity, feed it clean, ordinary food, and it grows up completely harmless. The glands stay empty. The most lethal frog in the world is only lethal because of its lunch. Which leaves one last question, and it's the one that genuinely puzzled scientists. If its own skin is coated in something that jams nerves open, why doesn't the frog seize up itself? Research tracing the genetics found the answer, and it's almost absurdly small. The frog carries a single change, one swapped building block in the receptor the toxin normally grabs onto. One tiny edit in its genetic code, and the compound that locks up everything else slides right past its own nerves without catching. The entire difference between the frog and the insect it just ate comes down to a single typo in its favor. The frog wears its danger on the outside in full view. The next animal is the exact opposite, and the fear it trades on isn't being caught at all. Human botfly. The fear here is making it out. Walking the whole trail, surviving the river and the canopy and everything we've covered, getting cleanly back to the city, and only then discovering you didn't come back alone. This is the human botfly, Dermatobia hominis, and the most impressive thing about it is the delivery system, which is genuinely some of the cleverest logistics in the forest. The adult botfly is bulky and loud, a heavy, buzzing thing roughly the size of a bee. It knows perfectly well that if it came at you directly, it would get swatted before it finished the approach. So it never approaches. Instead, it ambushes something small and quiet that's already going to find you on its own. A mosquito. It catches the mosquito in midair, holds it without harming it, glues a cluster of its eggs onto the mosquito's underside, and lets it go. The mosquito does the rest. And when that mosquito later lands on warm skin and settles in to feed, the warmth of the body is the trigger. The eggs hatch right there, on the spot, and the tiny larvae slip down and in, often through the very puncture the mosquito just made. You feel a mosquito bite. You don't feel the passenger that came with it. Once it's in, the larva is built to stay. Rings of backward-facing spines anchor it into the tissue, so any attempt to pull it out only sets the spines and draws it deeper. And it keeps its little chamber meticulously clean. It secretes its own natural antibiotics to stop the wound from going bad, because it needs the house intact and the host healthy for the 60 to 70 days it plans to stay. It is, in a strange way, a better caretaker of that patch of you than you are. And the detail that pushes it from unpleasant into eerie comes from the clinic. When doctors began watching these larvae on ultrasound, trying to position forceps to draw one out, they filmed something nobody expected. The larva dodges. The moment cold metal touches it, it pulls back, retreating deeper down its own tunnel, away from the instrument. It has, for all practical purposes, a survival reflex aimed specifically at not being removed. The thing living in the wound does not want to leave, and it will actively work to stay. The botfly hides inside you. The next one doesn't bother hiding at all. It just waits in the water for you to step in. Giant Amazon leech. Wading through a flooded stretch of the Amazon, the thing to be wary of isn't always the small red mark you find on your ankle afterward. Sometimes it's the cool, dark, slick shape attached to your calf that you didn't feel arrive. And on the rare bad day, that shape is the size of your forearm. This is the giant Amazon leech, Haemonteria gilliani, the longest leech on Earth, stretching to around 45 centimeters when it extends. It doesn't make a clumsy surface wound the way smaller leeches do. It carries a long, fine proboscis, a flexible internal tube it drives deep to reach a vessel directly, then draws from steadily and quietly, and it numbs the spot as it works, which is precisely why a creature that large can attach to a person who never notices. The tool that makes it possible is a compound in its saliva called hemantin, and hemantin is a serious piece of chemistry. It doesn't just thin the flow, it actively dissolves the clots a body forms to seal itself, keeping the channel open for as long as the leech wants to feed. And here is the twist that the swamp would never lead you to expect. That same compound, from one of the most viscerally off-putting animals in the entire basin, became a quiet hero of human medicine. Researchers studied hemantin precisely because it's so good at breaking down clots, and that work fed directly into treatments for the blocked vessels that cause heart attacks. The animal whose whole life is draining a vessel helped teach us how to keep human hearts running. There's even an oddly tender footnote to it. The female carries her young, up to 300 of them, riding on her own underside, swimming with the lot of them attached, which is more devoted parenting than most of the monsters on this list ever manage. So we've come through all of it. The 1-ton reptile in the black water, the bird with a bear's claws, the spider that comes toward you, the swarm with no eyes, the fish that fires 800 volts. An hour and a half of fangs and armor and 6 meters of mud. And now, at the very end, biology gets to make its point. Because the most dangerous animal in this entire forest was never any of them. It weighs less than a single drop of rain. It drifts in on wings too quiet to hear. And you will never, ever see it coming. Anopheles mosquito. This is the mosquito of the genus Anopheles, and it does its work with a delicacy none of the giants could manage. It doesn't tear at the skin. It settles down softly, slips in a fine needle, and releases a touch of its own anesthetic first. So the nerve never fires, so there's no sting to wake you. Then it draws, quietly, and in the exchange, it leaves something behind in the vein, a microscopic passenger, the parasite that causes malaria. And then it lifts off and is gone. No pain, no struggle. The whole transaction happens while its target sleeps, completely unaware that anything occurred at all. For all of recorded history, this is the one that emptied the river camps. Not the jaguar, not the caiman. The explorers and the armies who pushed into this forest didn't fall back from the cat on the bank or the snake on the trail. They came undone in the dark, soaked in fever, on a cot, brought low by something they never saw land on them. No predator on this entire list has reached even a fraction of the people this faint, silent insect has. Counted honestly, it has affected more human lives than every other animal we've talked about tonight, combined many times over. And here's the last thing, the part that makes it the perfect ending to all of it. The mosquito feels no malice. It isn't hunting you, doesn't hate you, doesn't even register you as anything more than warmth in a vessel. The female that carries the most dangerous cargo in the Amazon wants exactly one thing: a single drop of protein to make her eggs. That's the whole of it. She takes her drop and she leaves, and in that small, indifferent act she has shaped the human world more than every fang and claw and coil in this forest put together. She doesn't roar, she doesn't strike. She just needs one drop, and then she's gone, back into the dark, already looking for the next one. The most dangerous animal in the Amazon never even noticed you were afraid.